Hi, everybody. My name is Jen, and I'm joined today by my colleague Tifan. Tifan will introduce herself and explain the interpretation option to listen in French.
Bonjour, hi everybody. My name is Tiffaine. Pour les agents francophones, vous avez le choix d'écouter cette présentation en français. Pour cela, il suffit de cliquer en bas de votre écran, en bas de l'écran Zoom, sur Interprétation. Merci beaucoup et bonne écoute. Let's take a look at the agenda. We will discuss the following topics. You may find that some of these topics are already familiar to you. We'll discuss about the exam date, the test specifications, the exam platform, the candidate instructions, results and scoring, process, FAQs, questions, and contact. As you already know, the exams are divided into two parts, each consisting of two components. Each exam will be held daily from October 27th to October 30th. And the exams will take place each day from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m.
Eastern time. Just make to
Eastern time.
clarify that.
Yes.
Thanks, Tifan. I'm just going to quickly go over the test specifications that can be found on our website for the Patent Agent Skills exam. CPATA develops each examination using a set of test specifications that are approved by the registration committee to ensure that the exams test defensively. The test specifications, which you can find on our website, outline what an exam will measure in terms of content domain, as well as guidelines on how the content is to be measured. Such guidelines are expressed in terms of structure. For example, we provide information about format, length, and cognitive level, and context, which are the circumstances in which examination questions are framed and that can influence their interpretation. The content weights for the qualifying examinations were each set by a group of practicing agents with guidance from a psychometrician. These weights were informed by average criticality and importance ratings from the large-scale competency validation survey administered in September of 2022. The recommended content weights were presented to the registration committee and subsequently approved. The Patent Agent Skills examination is completed over 4 consecutive days. Each day tests a different component. Both components A and B of Part 1, so days 1 and 2, cover drafting and strategy. These are the components being written on October 27th and October 28th. Part 2, Component A, covers prosecution, validity, and infringement. This is the component being written on October 29th. Part 2, Component B, covers the rest of validity and infringement. This is the final component being written on October 30th. Components A and B of Part 1 are scored together, and components A and B of Part 2 are scored together. That means you will receive a performance report for Part 1 that provides information about your performance on strategy and drafting questions, and a separate performance report for Part 2 that provides information about your performance on prosecution, validity, and infringement questions. But you will not receive a breakdown of your performance specifically for each component. I'd also like to highlight that a performance report is only provided if a candidate does not demonstrate competency on that part of the examination. If a candidate demonstrates competency on a part of the examination, then they will receive a letter confirming that they have successfully demonstrated their competence on that part. The examination uses a limited open book format with electronic access through the exam platform to the Patent Act and the patent rules. Candidates are able to access these materials as secure but searchable electronic aids through the exam platform. This helps ensure that everyone has access to identical resources, reduces the risk of unauthorized materials, and helps to preserve the integrity of the exam. Each candidate is permitted to bring 2 pages of blank paper or lined paper and 2 writing utensils, a pen and/or a pencil, to each day of the examination. Candidates who opt to use scrap paper will be required to destroy the paper in front of the proctor at the end of each exam day. The electronic notepad will still be available in the exam aid section of the platform. The ability to jot notes on scrap paper can facilitate cognitive processing, reduce memory load, and support accessibility. The examination is administered using a computer-based platform supported by paradigm testing. As everyone has had to complete the knowledge exam requirement before attempting the skills exam, you are already familiar with this platform. The examination will be remotely proctored using live proctors from Monitor EDU. French-speaking proctors are available upon request. Please contact the registration department as soon as possible to arrange for a French-speaking proctor.
Here are the requirements for taking the exam. The specific technical requirements are available in the instructions and protocol guide, which is published on our website. In order to complete the exams, you will need the following: a laptop or desktop computer, the most recent version of the secure browser. Note, there are French directions located at the bottom. Please scroll to access them if needed. A mobile phone running at least Android OS 6.0 or Apple iOS 12.0 with a functioning camera and microphone. Google Meet app downloaded to your mobile device. A steady and reliable internet connection. Wi-Fi will be required for mobile streaming, with the minimum upload speed of 1 megabytes per second. A 6-foot extension cord and phone cord. A phone stand or something to prop the mobile phone on. Government issued ID. Candidate ID, which is provided on your confirmation of exam registration issued by CPATA. And a quiet venue. You must be alone in the room. Here are some tips for setting up your room. There is a video linked in the setup guide. Please keep these things in mind when setting up your testing environment. There should be adequate lighting. Walls should be blank. Your table or desk should be clear, other than your laptop computer. The areas beneath the desk and chair should be clear. The computer and mobile phone should be plugged in for the duration of the exam. You should have within reach a 6-foot extension cord and use it, if requested by the proctor, to move the computer and mobile phone. You should inform other individuals that may share space with you about your exam date and time, and confirm that they will remain quiet during the exam and will not enter the exam room. You must be alone in the exam room for the duration of the exam. No one can enter the exam room during the exam. And non-required electronics and any security or recording devices in the room must be turned off and put away in a safe place so that you will not be able to reach them. Connecting with the proctor to test the exam platform is now a mandatory requirement. This is true even if you have previously tested before. The live proctor check-in instructions are provided in the instructions and protocol guide. If you do not participate in this process, any requests to nullify an examination attempt for technology-related reasons may not be approved. Proctors are available 24/7. You will be able to test your computer system and ensure everything works properly before the exams are written the following week. This is not a full mock practice exam. You will only be presented with the published practice exam questions again. This is to give candidates more familiarity with the platform and what to expect on exam days. The instructions for connecting with the proctor for the checking are published on our website.
Thank you, Tifan. I just want to reiterate that you must uninstall the previous version of the secure browser and install the new version of the secure browser before the live proctor check-in week. This will allow you to make sure that you have access to all of the functionality that will be required for the examination. The link to the new secure browser is in the information and instructions protocol guide that is posted on our website. During the live proctor check-in week, first of all, it's mandatory, so everyone has to go through this process. And again, you can connect with a proctor 24/7 between October 20th and October 24th, which is the week before the exam. During the live proctor check-in, you're going to need to test the following functionality. You need to test connecting with a proctor, launching the new version of the secure browser, typing into response boxes, copying and pasting, and we'll have some slides later on in this presentation that go through the steps required for copy and paste, editing responses, moving between questions, so that's moving forward between questions and then also going back to previous questions, bookmarking questions, changing the font size and using highlight and strike through functionality, accessing and searching in the exam aids, and resizing the screen. And I have a slide about how to resize the screen as well in a little bit later after this part of the presentation. In terms of preparation for the exam days, it is very important that you test your equipment ahead of time during the live proctor check-in week. You should not be testing your equipment on exam day. This has previously led to some issues for some candidates that were not able to be resolved on the examination days, and therefore that candidate was not able to proceed through the examination. So it's very, very important that everybody does the live proctor check-in the week of October 20th to the 24th. You also should have government-issued photo ID with you for your proctor check-in and when you do the actual examinations. This is for security reasons and confirms that the person that is registered with us is the person that is writing the examination on that day. And have your candidate number, your candidate ID. This is a unique number that is provided to each candidate. It's a new number, so you won't be using a previously assigned number. And it's a unique number provided to each candidate for the exam administration. This is not your CPATA ID. Your CPATA ID is public information, which would not allow your exam submission to be anonymous when it's being marked. So it's very important that you know what your candidate number is, and those will be issued on Friday, October 17th. So don't worry, if you haven't received it yet, you shouldn't have received it yet. Everybody will receive it on October 17th when we send out the candidate confirmation letters. On exam day, it's very important that you connect with a proctor and fill in the sign-in form. You will be automatically familiar with this process because you have gone through the live proctor check-in the week before. But it is a very important step because if you don't connect with a proctor, you won't be able to access the examination. So the first step is to connect with the proctor first. The proctor will go through the registration process, they'll check your ID, they'll do the room and system check, and then finally they will provide you with your login information to access the exam. It's important that you connect with a proctor before the exam start time at 1 o'clock. Candidates can start connecting with proctors as early as 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Proctors are often assisting more than one candidate log into the exam. So to help ensure that everyone starts on time and maybe a little bit early, it's helpful to connect starting around noon and no later than 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. All of these instructions are provided in the instructions and information protocol guide that's posted on our website. You also want to make sure that you have Google Meet pre-downloaded on your cell phone, which Tifan explained earlier. Have your government picture ID and candidate number ready. And then after you've complete the check-in process, they will release the codes to log into the platform to start the examination. During the exam, you may not access the following types of personal items: a mobile phone, Now, the only mobile phone that you are allowed to have with you is the one that you are using for proctoring. You cannot have access to any other mobile phone or other electronic devices. You also cannot have access to headphones or headsets, either wired or Bluetooth, no handheld computers or other electronic devices, no watches, no wallets, no purses, bags, or coats, no books, notes, or any other materials. You also may not wear hats or other head coverings unless they are worn as a religious observance. Please note that you cannot bring any pre-printed materials with you to the exam. This includes copies of the Act and the rules. As previously mentioned, candidates are able to access these materials as secure but searchable electronic aids through the exam platform. Further, the background materials for the exam are only available through the Secure Exam portal. Materials will not be emailed ahead of time for printing or to have open in other windows on your computer during this examination. This helps ensure that everyone has access to identical resources, reduces the risk of unauthorized materials, and helps preserve the integrity of the exam. Printing materials increases stress on candidates to print quickly and resolve or troubleshoot printer issues, which could delay starting the examination. I'll also note that smart glasses or glasses that are electronic and that can do recordings and things like that are not permitted for this examination. The proctors will do a security check to make sure that no type of smart glasses are being worn by any candidates, because that is an exam security issue. Incident reports. Monitor EDU uses Google Meet to support their proctoring services. This allows exam sessions to be recorded. The recordings are saved with Monitor EDU for a finite period of time. Therefore, if something occurs during your exam that you think that we should be aware of, you have to send a request to schedule@monitoredu.com with your name, candidate number, and the date of the exam when the incident occurred to request that they share the recording with CPATA for further investigation. These requests must be submitted to Monitor EDU prior to the release of the examination results. Snacks and water. You may have a drink with you, but it must be in a clear vessel, such as a clear bottle, cup, glass, etc., with no labels. If you have a bottle with a label on it, you have to remove the label. You may also have snacks with you, but they must be in a clear Ziploc-style bag so that the proctor can see what is in the bag. Please tell the proctor at the beginning when you're checking in that you'd like to have snacks during the exam so that they are aware. You will receive 2 email confirmations from Monitor EDU. The Friday before the live proctor check-in on October 17th, you'll receive an email from Monitor EDU reconfirming the information for the live proctor check-in the week of October 20th to the 24th. The Friday before the exam starts, so on October 24th, you'll receive another email from Monitor EDU that provides you with protocol for exam days and some system setup information. All of this information can be found in the candidate guide and the information and instructions protocol, which are already posted on our website. Earplugs. If you wish to wear earplugs during the exam, they need to be new foam earplugs that are still in the package. Candidates must open them in front of the proctor. Candidates must advise CPATA ahead of time if they wish to use earplugs so that we can inform the proctors. Jewelry. To support the integrity of the exam and security, you will be asked to remove any jewelry before the exam, including earrings, necklaces, bracelets, etc. Given that this is a closed book exam, you cannot have any materials at all with you. You can have scrap paper and 2 utensils as previously advised. Multiple monitors. Candidates can only use one monitor, but may choose which monitor they use if you have multiple monitors. So for example, for my computer setup, I have a laptop connected to an external monitor. If I wanted to write my exam on the larger external monitor, I would have to either close my laptop screen or put a covering over it. And the proctors from Monitor EDU will be able to assist you during the live proctor check-in week to make sure that your system and your setup is acceptable. Bathroom breaks. Time is not added back for bathroom breaks, but they are permitted. The exam is only paused or time is only added back for those who have approved accommodations. When a candidate leaves the testing area for a bathroom break, proctors will perform another security check when the candidate re-enters the testing area. Candidates who are absent from the testing area for an extended period of time, for example, longer than a couple of minutes, or who take frequent breaks will be flagged for exam security. If security issues are detected, the candidate's examination attempt may be invalidated and other actions may be taken. Technical issues. In the event of any technical issues, candidates must get the proctor's attention. This will allow the candidate to communicate with the proctor, who will then assist them and help them with troubleshooting. Time will only be added back or the exam will only be paused if the issue is beyond the candidate's control and they are in communication with the proctor about what is going on.
You have a maximum of 3 hours to complete your examination. All exams will be submitted 3 hours after you have started your exam. It is your responsibility to ensure that your environment is adequate for testing. The examination is being displayed in the language of choice you selected on your registration form. Please answer in the official language of your choice, English or French. Computer problems, internet-related difficulties, and connectivity issues, including problems resulting from a power outage, should be directed to the live proctor during the exam. As this is an individual examination, you're strictly forbidden from consulting any other individuals or materials. Late start. Any time missed due to late start, which was not attributed to a technology issue, will be deducted from the total examination time. Read the questions carefully. Exam aid translations. A PDF of the French version of the exam has been included as an exam aid in the platform. You can review the French questions using that PDF, if needed, throughout the exam. Exit survey. Upon submission of the exam, you will be presented with a link to an optional survey that asks about any issues you may have experienced during the exam. To complete the survey, click on Survey on the submission page. A new window will open with the survey questions. Please complete the survey and click Submit. Once the survey has been submitted, close the Survey tab and then click on Close on the exam submission page. Note that once your exam has been submitted and you're presented with the survey page, you will not be able to go back into the exam. The system will ask you to confirm your wish to submit your exam before the submission is made.
Okay, let's take a look at the exam platform. After we've done the presentation, then I'll share my screen for the sample exams that are posted on the website, and we'll go through some of this functionality and some of the things that I'm showing you right now. But for now, we'll just continue with the slide deck, and then I will give you a demonstration afterwards. So you will receive your username and password from the exam provider and the link to the exam, and you'll use this information to log into the exam platform. You'll see the exams on the dashboard and then click on Start Test to begin the examination. You'll read through the instructions and then the candidate agreement, and you'll need to click Accept to the candidate agreement in order for the exam to launch. Note that the instructions and the candidate agreement that are already on our website for the practice exams are the same ones that will be presented to you on exam days. So you're more than welcome, and I strongly recommend that you read through the instructions and the candidate agreement well ahead of the exam days so that you're familiar with the information before you start the examination. The countdown and the clock won't start until you have accepted the candidate agreement and you click on start for the exam. So on the exam days, you can take as much time as you need to read through these sections again. But just letting you know that that information is available ahead of time should you wish to review it before the exam days. It's important to know that you have different options for navigating through the questions. You can use the previous or next buttons. You can click on the question numbers that are at the bottom of the screen, or you can navigate to attempted, incomplete, or flagged questions using the question review function. Now, flagged questions are ones where you have clicked on bookmark, so it has indicated that that's something that you want to go back to. Maybe it's a question that you started but you didn't finish, or a question where you want to review your response again. Either way, you can use the bookmark feature, and that shows up as flagged under the question review box. We strongly recommend that candidates confirm that all questions have been answered before they submit their examination. Now, it's important to also note that even if you type one word into the response box, the system will consider that you've answered that question. So just because a question has been marked as attempted doesn't necessarily mean that you have completed answering that question. So if you have time at the end of the exam, before your exam is submitted, I definitely recommend going through your previous responses to make sure that all of your responses and all of the answers are there before you click on submit. Questions that are marked in blue have been answered, and questions that are still green have not yet been answered, or those would be considered incomplete in the question review box. I encourage you to check the question review section in the bottom right corner to ensure that you have answered all of the questions before submitting your exam. But again, that could be a partial response, so it's best for you to actually go back to each question response box and make sure that you are comfortable with the response that you have provided. Here are some sample views that can show you the types of questions that are available on the platform. So for this sample view, it is called a split screen view, where the background materials for a question or a set of questions is visible on the left side of your screen, and the questions with the response boxes are on the right side of the response screen. Another sample format is the background materials are just available at the top of the screen, and then underneath that are the questions and response boxes. So for the patent agent skills exam, most of the questions are split screen because of the background materials that are provided, but you might also come across a question or two that is in this format where the background materials are just across the top and the question and response box are underneath it. During the live proctor check-in, it will be important for you to test searching the exam aids. We have added a link to our website with a short video demonstrating how to use the search functionality on the secure platform. Please do not try to use Control F or Command F. The secure browser is not set up to process this function consistently. Note that the newest version of the secure browser is required in order to see the magnifying glass icon. This is something that you should practice during the live proctor check-in. In terms of the font size and screen zoom, there are a couple of ways to change the view of your exam. So for example, you can use the font increase or decrease functionality to change the actual size of the text, and I'll demonstrate that when we've completed the presentation. You can also use Control plus or Control minus, or I think if you're using a Mac, it would be Command plus or Command minus, to zoom in or out of the exam window screen. You can also review the question in the exam aids. So there's going to be a PDF of the English version of the exam and a PDF of the French version of the exam in the exam aids, and you can view any of the materials that are on the platform in those PDFs as well. This can be helpful for candidates that might have smaller monitors where the text may be cut off for some questions. So if you come across a question where some of the text is cut off, I would recommend changing the font size and or the zoom on the screen so that you can see the full text or full question. Now, there are a couple of different ways to use the copy and paste functionality on the platform. Copy and paste can be done from within the same response box. So if you type something into the response box and you want to copy and paste that within the same response box, you will be able to do that. You can copy and paste from one response box to another response box if you want to do that. You can copy and paste from the exam aids, and you can copy and paste from the question stem and or the background and reference materials that are on the platform. There are two different methods to copy and paste. We're going to call the first method the right-click method, and we're going to call the second method the drag and drop method. So depending on what you're doing, that will determine which method you're going to use. So I'll just bring up on the screen the first method. Last year, some candidates experienced issues with copy and paste functionality. If you experience a situation during the exam where the spaces between your previously typed words were being removed, you can flag this with your proctor and proceed with the exam. Do not worry about going back to fix the spacing between the words. The exam advisory group will be advised, and you will not be penalized for any spacing issues due to copy and paste functionality issues. So in order to do the right-click method, when copying and pasting from within a response box, text box, or from one response box to another, you select the text you wish to copy, right-click and select Copy. Then you're going to right-click into the response box and select Paste. A window will pop up as follows. From here, candidates need to right-click again and paste the copied text into the text box and press OK. The copied text will appear inside the essay text box entry. Now, I have put in a request for this pop-up window to be presented in French for candidates who are writing in French. However, I am not sure if that translation request will be able to be completed. So this might be visible to you in English, even if you're writing the French exam. We apologize for that if that is the case, but we are limited to some of the functionality based on what the exam platform provider can give to us. Now, the other right-click method would be copying and pasting from the exam aids or background materials. So you would select the text that you wish to copy. Say you're in the Patent Act or the patent rules. You would press Control-C or Command-C. Navigate back to the response box and click into the spot that you want to paste the text, and then you would right-click and select Paste. The window will pop up again, and then you'll do the same process as before. You'll need to right-click and paste the copy text inside this text box and press OK. The copy text box will appear, or the copy text will appear inside the essay text box entry. So this is why it's really important that during the live proctor check-in, you test these different methods, because there's a little bit of a different process that's in place depending on what you're copying and pasting from and to. Now, the easier method, which I would suggest if you're having to copy and paste text from the background materials that are on the platform, or the question stem, is the drag and drop method. So in order to do the drag and drop method, you would select the text that you want to copy and then drag and drop it into the response box. So if it's the first thing that you're typing in, then you drag and drop it into the top left corner of the response box. If it's somewhere within the response that you've already started to write, then you would just drag and drop it into the place that you wanted it to go. This functionality would most likely be useful for part 2 of the exam. So that would be part 2A and part 2B. This is where you would likely need to use this drag and drop functionality. As I mentioned, then you would edit as needed according to the instructions. So for example, in component 2A, there are some amendments that you need to make. I would recommend selecting the text that you need to amend, dragging and dropping it into the response box, and then you can go ahead and edit that text as needed in accordance with the instructions. So that might be underlining something or striking through something. Here is what an amended claim would look like on the platform. You'll see that I used the strike through and underline functions in the text editor to demonstrate my changes in accordance with the instructions. You need to use these functions for those answers so that the exam markers can easily identify your changes. And in the exam platform during the exam, you'll see which questions are asking you to make amendments and an instruction that says for easy editing, select the text you want to amend and drag and drop it into the top left corner of the response box. So you can do that for when you're starting a response, but you can also drag and drop text into any part of the response box once you've actually started filling it in with a response. Some of the questions for part 2 require candidates to complete a chart. So that would be for part 2B. You can use the same functionality to copy the chart into the response box and then complete the chart. All you need to do is select all of the columns and rows in the chart that you want to copy and drag and drop that into the top left corner of the response box or into the next part of the response box if there are multiple charts that you need to complete. You can then proceed with clicking into the cell that you want to edit and adding in your text. So, if you have any issues with copy and paste functionality, it's really important that you need to get your proctor's attention so that they can help you troubleshoot. If the proctor cannot resolve the issue, they will verify that the functionality is not working for you. At that point, you can request additional time to compensate for this issue. The following time extensions have been approved in the event that copy and paste is not working for you during the exam. So for components 1A and 1B, you can request an additional 15 additional minutes to be added to your clock. For 2A and 2B, you can request an additional 30 minutes of time. All issues that cannot be resolved will be escalated to me during the exam for review and approval for the extended time. For 2B, that requires the completion of charts for some of the questions. You can recreate the columns of the table to fill in your answer, and the exam advisory group will go down box by box, assuming that you match the table in the exam, without the need for the pre-populated content from the exam to be represented at all. Additionally, you can abridge the claim language to make clear what element you're referring to. So that's if you are unable to get the copy and paste to work and you need to type in or recreate whatever you're having to do for the exam without using the copy and paste functionality. As I mentioned earlier, if you experience a situation during the exam where the spaces between your previously typed words are being removed, please just proceed with the exam and don't worry about going back to fix the spacing. You can advise that something happened during the exit survey that Tifan was explaining previously. The exam board has been advised of this issue, and again, no one will be penalized for any spacing issues. So there are a couple of issues that you might experience during the examination. And in order for us to assist you, it's important for you to know what these issues might be. And then on the next slide, Tifan will describe how to get your proctor's attention to deal with any of these issues. So if you experience a power outage is a sudden loss of electricity that interrupts the exam delivery or causes the test taker's devices to shut down. If you lose power and the device shuts down, you need to first and foremost remain calm. If the computer is off, then the exam timer should be paused automatically. The candidate should get the proctor's attention to let them know what has happened, and they can guide them on what to do next. Usually, in a situation, if there is a technical issue or a power outage or a network connectivity issue, restarting the device or restarting the modem or router usually resolves the issues. If something cannot be resolved, Monitor EDU will escalate the issue to me during the exam, and then we will talk about possible solutions if the power is not restored right away. You might also experience network connectivity issues. These are problems with internet connectivity that prevent test takers from accessing the exam platform or cause the exam to freeze or disconnect. If a candidate has internet connectivity issues, they will need to let the proctor know right away. The proctor will then ask the candidate to restart the computer. While this is happening, if the candidate has access to the internet router or modem, they might need to restart that as well. If the issue does not resolve itself, Monitor EDU will escalate it to me during the exam, and then we will talk about potential next steps if the issue persists. Technical issues or software malfunction with the platform. You might experience issues with the exam software, such as errors, bugs, incompatibilities, or crashes that interfere with exam delivery or prevent test takers from progressing through the exam. Now, this is why we have the live proctor check-in, so we could try to resolve any technical difficulties before the exam days. However, you never know what's going to happen. So if a candidate experiences any of these issues, again, you need to connect to the proctor right away for troubleshooting assistance. Remember, if you experience any issues, you must get the proctor's attention so that we can problem solve together and you can get any time added back as might be needed. Tifan will now explain how to get the proctor's attention.
Thank you, Jen. If you need the proctor at all during an exam, please say your name and raise your hand and wait for the proctor to connect back through audio with you. Proctors can manage more than one test taker at the same time. So if it takes them a minute to respond, it could be that they're assisting another test taker. If they do not respond, please pick up your phone and wave at the camera or hold your phone so that they can see that you need something. Please do not disconnect from the video chat without talking to the proctor first.
Now I'd like to turn our attention to results and scoring. There is no single method to determine a defensible pass mark for all tests or purposes. Different methods are suited to different circumstances. As a licensing body, CPATA needs to select an approach to standard setting based on the purpose of the examination, which is to assess entry-level competencies, as well as how closely the method aligns with assessment goals. For a high-stakes licensing examination, in other words, a test with important consequences, the selected standard setting approach should relate to the purpose of the examination, be appropriate to the level of complexity of the competencies to be assessed by the examination, be appropriate to the specific format of the examination. So for example, we use a different standard setting methodology for the multiple choice exam than we do for this performance-based exam. It should be supported by scholarly research that supports its use, and for practical reasons should reflect the availability of resources. In 2023, the Registration Committee approved the methodologies which are used on the new examinations to determine the pass mark. For the skills examination, they approved the borderline regression method. The borderline regression method allows the pass mark to be set using test performance from all test takers, not just a subset from the borderline test takers, and is particularly well suited to small-scale assessments because it uses data from all examinees in the derivation of a cut score. Consistent with other high-stakes examinations, a minimum standard will be determined through a systematic standard-setting process that will involve a panel of markers who are considered experts in the field, so the exam advisory group. Markers evaluate each test taker using a standardized marking guide and then provide an overall impression of the test taker's ability using a rating scale. The pass mark is then based on the relationship between all of the test scores and all of the overall impression ratings. Candidates who demonstrate competency on either part of this exam, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, will not receive a performance report. The result of competency demonstrated means that performance on the exam met or exceeded the minimum standard that is derived using the borderline regression analysis, meaning they are showing a general understanding of the skills associated with those areas of patent agent practice, and that subject to demonstrating competency on the other parts and meeting other requirements, the candidate would then be eligible to apply for a Class 1 license. Candidates who do not yet demonstrate competency will receive a performance report which outlines the candidate's performance. The result of competency not yet demonstrated means that performance on the exam did not meet the minimum standard as determined through the borderline regression analysis methodology. The candidate did not yet prove a sufficient understanding of the general skills associated with patent agent practice. The candidate may have gaps in their knowledge of key skills. This result suggests that the candidate may need further preparation and studying before reattempting that part of the examination or engaging in patent agent practice. The performance report also includes the overall performance descriptor that compares the candidate's performance to the minimum standard. This information, along with measurement variability data, informs an estimate of how close the candidate's performance was to the passing standard. So candidates who receive an overall result of competency not yet demonstrated would receive a corresponding performance descriptor of either approaches the standard or below the standard. Approaches the standard means that the candidate's performance on the exam was close to the passing standard, showing some potential. However, improvement is needed to meet the standard. Below the standard means that the candidate's performance on the exam was below the passing standard and improvement is definitely needed. Finally, the performance report will list the skills areas that are tested on that part of the exam, as well as the percentage of questions on the exam that are related to each area. Skills areas with more questions have a greater effect on your overall performance. The performance details show whether your performance in each skills area meets, which means is equal to or exceeds, or is below a minimal threshold that is set for each area. The area level thresholds are set using data from the standard setting process. It is important to keep in mind that only the total score will determine the overall result of that part of the examination. There is no separate pass mark for each skills area. So stronger performance in one area can offset weaker performance in another. Keep in mind that the area level results are based on fewer questions than the overall result, making them less reliable for predicting future performance. For this reason, the meets or below insights should only be used to help candidates better self-assess their skills in these areas, not as a definitive statement of their ability. Now, we understand that test takers may be used to seeing specific scores on exams and that these scores provide a tangible measure of performance. However, the primary purpose of our qualifying exams is not to rank order test takers or to precisely measure their depth of knowledge or skill. Rather, it's to determine whether a test taker has achieved a certain level of minimum competence. The important question is not how much better did one person do compared to the other, but has this person met the minimal level of competence required to practice safely and effectively? You can think of the licensing process in terms of a series of hurdles. The goal of completing these hurdles isn't necessarily about how much faster one person is than the other. The primary objective is to determine whether each person can successfully complete each hurdle. A person who clears the hurdle by 1 inch is just as successful in this context as the person who clears them by a foot. In a similar vein, our qualifying examinations work more like a series of hurdles rather than a race against other competitors. As such, the score isn't as meaningful as the overall decision of competency demonstrated or competency not yet demonstrated. You can also think of the pass mark as analogous to the height requirement for amusement park rides. When you approach a ride, there is a sign indicating a height that guests must be this tall, or whatever it is, to ride. The point of this measure isn't to see who the tallest person is, but to ensure that everyone on the ride meets a minimum height for safety reasons. Similarly, our exam isn't about who achieves the highest score, but whether each candidate has reached the necessary height or level of competence to practice the profession safely and effectively. In addition, focusing on the result rather than the numeric score may also reduce unhelpful competition amongst test takers, which can then lessen test-related stress. Our goal is to ensure that each licensed individual is qualified and competent. We have chosen this method of reporting for our exams because we believe that this method best serves that purpose. This approach focuses on the goal of achieving general proficiency rather than encouraging test takers to chase after a high score. So in other words, we do not know the pass mark before the exam is actually written, as was the case with the legacy exams. We only know the pass mark after the exams are written and the borderline regression analysis has been completed. Additionally, the cut score or the pass mark is not actually made available publicly. Only the pass rate for each examination will be made public. Finally, you might be wondering if you can challenge your result. The short answer is no, you cannot challenge your result. The long answer is the process used to create, administer, and score the CPATA skills examinations employs psychometric best practices at every stage to ensure that it is valid, reliable, defensible, and fair. From a development perspective, practicing agents were recruited to develop the 2025 examination forms in accordance with the approved test specifications. They were required to adhere to a development guide which outlined fundamentals, recommended practices specific to developing constructed response and performance-based questions, and writing conventions that apply to all items of various types. After the exam forms were developed, they underwent a rigorous review process to ensure that the questions were appropriate and that the answer key was correct. This included a pilot test that was conducted both in English and in French, where independent subject matter experts, in other words, agents who were not involved with the exam development, actually took the exam and reviewed it for the following: alignment to the test specifications, to confirm whether the exam focused on must-know aspects of core concepts. Context, to confirm that the contextual information respected and represented a diversity of contexts so that candidates from a wide range of populations were able to understand the content. Constructed response best practices, to confirm facts and materials maintained expected length, cognitive complexity, and difficulty. Questions and materials were as short as possible, while at the same time supplying enough information. Questions were clear, free from tricks, they were plausible and realistic. Time, So we also confirmed whether test takers can complete the exam within the 3-hour time frame. And finally, overall writing, to confirm it is error-free, simple, clear, concise, consistent, logical, and inclusive. A psychometrician, which is someone who is an expert in defensible assessment, was also involved in the development of the exam form and key to confirm that they adhered to defensible, valid, and reliable practices. We conducted a very robust translation review, where bilingual practicing agents from the exam advisory groups reviewed the translations to ensure that exam forms were equivalent and meant the same thing in each language, regardless of which language the candidate writes the exam in. And we've also implemented several procedures for marking. Before marking begins, each examination advisory group member receives general training from the psychometric expert and takes part in specific training for the part of the exam that they will be marking. They also complete practice exercises known as calibration exercises to ensure consistency in scoring. The exams are then marked using the detailed scoring key, which is also updated as needed during the marking process to keep it consistent and accurate. 2 independent markers score each exam submission, and each marker does this independently, recording their own scores. Then, the marking pairs will discuss discrepant marks at the question level. After discussing the marks, they agree on a final score for each question or set of marks. And before finalizing their scores, each exam is checked for any errors, such as missing scores, incomplete rating scales, or any data entry mistakes. Any errors are corrected and reported to the relevant examination advisory group. After marking, we determine the pass mark using the standard setting process that I described earlier. Once a pass mark is calculated, we identify the borderline cases. These borderline cases are then reviewed by examination advisory group members who were not involved in the initial exam marking. These reviewers do not see the original scores to avoid bias and ensure a fresh perspective. Once the initial review is done, the reviewers will receive the original notes and scores without knowing who made them. This information will then help ensure that important perspectives are not overlooked, help maintain consistency in scoring, and ensures the review aligns with examination standards. Anonymizing the notes and scores helps prevent bias and ensure fairness. The reviewer's mark is then averaged with the original mark, giving both equal weight. This balance combines the benefits of collaborative marking with the independent assessment of the reviewer. In exceptional cases, such as where there is a significant difference between scores, we may modify or enhance this review process to maintain fairness. Finally, the registration committee will approve the pass mark and the results file is created using that information. Any additional borderline cases are reviewed in accordance with the described process. The results file is then checked again for accuracy before the performance reports are created. That is all to say that candidates will no longer be able to access or review their exam materials after the examination. This protects the security and integrity of the exam process. As described, to address any concerns about this change in process, we have implemented many checks and controls to verify the accuracy of the skills exam results before they are provided to candidates. The borderline case review process happens automatically and at no additional cost to the candidate. This streamlined process for scoring and borderline case review preemptively addresses any concerns about the accuracy of the results and removes the stress and financial impact of the recorrection process from candidates, as each recorrection request for a component of the skills exam would have cost $500 plus taxes. The skills examination will be administered once per year, so once per year in 2025, once per year in 2026, 2027, etc., in the fall. all agents in training are permitted to attempt the skills examination up to 2 times. Agents in training who do not attempt the exam within 2 years after the day they complete their training will be required to provide and complete a remedial training and education plan before being permitted to attempt the exam. Similarly, agents in training who do not yet demonstrate competency on the skills exams after 2 attempts are also required to provide and complete a remedial training and education plan before being permitted to attempt the exam again. So that doesn't mean that after 2 attempts, if you're unable to demonstrate competency, that you're kicked out or that you're suspended or revoked as a Class 3 agent. It means that you need to provide us with a plan for what you're going to do so that at your next attempt, you have a better likelihood of being successful on the examination. Agents in training who have attempted the skills exam and then request a delay in writing a subsequent administration of the exam for a reason beyond their control, but who don't attempt it again within the period of 2 years, are also required to provide and complete a remedial training and education plan before being permitted to attempt the exam again. So what happens if there are extenuating circumstances or irregularities during an examination? CPATA uses various methods to detect and address issues and irregularities. At the end of each examination, CPATA solicits feedback from test takers about their extenuating circumstances. For example, compassionate consideration, medical reasons, or process anomalies that the test taker believes materially impaired their exam performance. Additionally, CPATA actively seeks and analyzes information from test takers, exam administrators, and experts to identify irregularities in an exam administration, including misconduct. In the case of extenuating circumstances or any irregularity, we reserve the right to withhold a result, to nullify or invalidate any exam submission, to subject any exam or part thereof to further review, and to take other action, including disciplinary action if appropriate, in order to preserve the integrity of the licensing process. So resources are available on our website to assist candidates in preparing for this examination. This includes the candidate guide, the setup guide, what to study, the test specifications, and the sample exams. So I will show you in just a minute on the website what some of these different resources look like. A quick note that the sample exam for the skills exam is a full sample. So unlike the sample for the knowledge exams, which was only 15 questions, even though the exam was 135 questions, the sample exams that we have on the website in PDF form are actually full sample exams. So that includes a full question set for each component of the examination. And we provided that so that candidates are familiar with the types of questions that they might be asked on the skills exam. However, the actual exam may contain questions that differ significantly in form and content. The subject matter is the same across both components for parts A and B for the sample exams of part 1 for illustrative purposes. However, the subject matter for each component in part 1 on the actual exam will be different. So on the actual exam for 2025, 1A will not have the same content as 1B. On the sample exams, though, they are using the same content just for illustrative purposes. For 2A, while the sample exam contains multiple devices in different technology areas, the actual exam for 2A is targeted at one general technology area. So I just wanted to make that differentiation between the sample exams on the website and the actual exams when you write them at the end of the month.
Thank you, Jen. So if you want to, of course, you're free to email us anytime if you have any questions. You can also contact Monitor Edu with the with the email schedule at monitoredu.com. You can speak to a live agent. You have the link. Any questions you're not sure who to ask, just email us or call us.
All right, so what I'm going to do is I know I've seen a couple of questions coming through, so we'll get to the questions in just a few minutes. But I'm going to stop sharing this screen and just share the website with you quickly so we can go through some of the things that you're going to need to do. A quick reminder that the slide deck and the recording will be posted on our website over the next couple of days. So please definitely review this recording again and review the slide deck again if you have any questions. If there are any questions that are asked during the Q&A session that we can't answer right now, then we will look up those answers and then get back to all of the exam registrants with the information. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute and I'm going to put up the
And in the
exam.
meantime, so you will receive on October 17th an email, the confirmation email, with all the details, such as the language that you chose, if you ask for any accommodations, and of course your candidate ID. So October 17th.
Thank you for reiterating that, Tifan. Okay, so I'm just sharing my screen now. I'm just sharing the website. I apologize, I'm not looking at the camera anymore. I'm going to be looking over at the screen that I'm sharing. So under agents and training and then patent agent qualifying examinations, you should all be familiar with this part of the website anyways, but under preparation, you will see the link to the skills exam candidate guide, the link to the exam instructions and protocol. And again, it's very important that you read these two documents because the new link to the new secure browser is in the examination instructions and protocol document. So definitely need to uninstall the previous version of the secure browser and install the new version of the secure browser before you do the live proctor check-in in a few weeks. We've also provided these what to study helpful links, and I'll just show you the patent agent skills exam one. So really this document is a combination of the test specifications that are on the website and the technical competency profile. So you can see here that for part one, we test strategy and drafting. And these are the different performance criteria that are in the technical competency profiles under the heading of strategy and under the heading of drafting. 33% plus or minus 10% of part one, so that's components 1A and 1B, test knowledge and performance criteria on strategy. And then about 67% of the exam over those 2 days is testing drafting. So, we will be possibly asking you to interpret search results or plan a patent search or whatever it is that we ask you to do. But these are the types of things that we would ask on that part of the qualifying exam for skills. If you scroll down, then we have the same information for part two. So part two, so 2A and 2B, cover prosecution, validity, and infringement in these percentages here. And these are the performance criteria that we will be asking you to do. So these are the actions that we will be asking you to do on the exam. We might ask you to analyze a patent family file history. We might ask you to respond to an office action for prosecution. For validity, we might ask you to construe claim terms for the purposes of assessing validity. For infringement, we might ask you to analyze a claim to determine infringement. So these are the things that you will see on the skills exam for patent agents. And in order to practice, then what you can do is in your normal course of your everyday work as a patent agent trainee with your supervisor, you can go through exercises that allow you to do these things. And that is the best way to prepare for this examination. The best way to prepare for the examination is not to use old exams for practice materials. It is to actually, use real life examples in your day-to-day practice to actually learn how to do these various things. So that's the one thing that I wanted to show you. The other would be the test specifications. So if you click, I'll just open part one. This is really just the full document for the slide that I showed for test specifications. It's the same kind of information that we talked about. So the breakdown of marks, how much time is allotted to each day, whether or not you can take something with you or not. So this is a limited open book format, meaning you have restricted electronic access to the Patent Act and the patent rules, for example. So those test specifications for Part 1 and Part 2 are there. Then you'll see the section for the knowledge exam, which everyone here has already completed. So you'll scroll down to the sample skills exam questions. And this is where we have the PDFs that have the full samples for all of the different components. I'll just open Part 1 as an example. So this is the Part 1 sample exam. And you can see that it has all of the background materials that you might need for this sample exam. And the questions start toward the bottom. They tell you how many marks are assigned to each question and the types of things. So for example, question 1 on the sample exam for 1A asks you to address the client's needs and goals, address any notable aspects of the innovation context, and any notable costs or benefits of patent protection in this case with a brief rationale. So that's an example of, say, a strategy question that you might be asked on the skills exam. Under the Part 1 Component A answer key, you will then be able to see a sample response to some of these questions. So let me just scroll back down to the sample. So here was the sample question, and then this is a sample response. So this isn't to say that this is the only answer, but it is a sample answer that would receive full marks on the actual exam if this was a live exam administration. So you can definitely take a look at all sample exams and sample answer keys to get a better idea of what you might be asked to do on each component of the exam. Now down here, we have the actual links to the configuration of these exams on the platform. So I've just opened 1A sample. Again, I mentioned that the instructions are already there, so please take a look at the instructions ahead of time, as well as the candidate agreement, so you can read through that. You click on accept and then start the exam. Now for the sample exams, we've only configured a few questions for each component on the platform. So you won't see all of the questions for the sample on the platform for this, but this is something that you would be able to see ahead of time. You can go right now to the website and launch any of these. So I'm just going to point out a couple of different aspects of the platform, which you should already be familiar with because you've written the knowledge exams. But up here in the top right-hand corner, you'll see the counter has started. So everyone starts with 3 hours and it counts down from 3 hours. Down on the bottom left, you'll see the questions, and you can see they're all green because we haven't put any responses into the text box here. You can change the font size. So I'm going to increase the font size. You can see how big it gets. Put it back down to medium. On the right side of the screen, if you click on question review, that's the little question review box where it shows you which questions you've written responses into, which questions you haven't written any responses into, if you've bookmarked any questions, so those are the flagged, and then if you click review all, then all the filters will go away and you'll see the whole exam again. Over here on the right side, you'll see the exam aids. So this is where you have access to the Patent Act and the patent rules. And I'll just point out, I'll scroll back up under the Patent Agent Skills Exam Candidate Guide. The link to the Act and the rules that are in this guide are the versions that will be on the platform. And they are the versions that were used to develop the exam content. So it's not the most current version that you might find on the Government of Canada website. These are the versions that were in place when the exam was developed earlier this year. And these are the versions that will be available to you through the exam aids. So here we are. I'll just close that up. You can also see that we have PDFs of the exam. So this is where you would be able to see the PDF of the exam and the French version as well. So those are the exam aids. Oh, and the notebook. So I'll just do this is a test. That's what the notebook looks like if you use that. So I'm going to quickly demonstrate how to do the drag and drop method. I'm going to select this text here. I'm going to say that this is the text that I want to drag and drop. And you're just going to highlight and drag and drop it into the top left-hand corner of the screen. So you can see there that the text is now available. Now, say I want to copy part of this and paste it into the same response box. I'm going to highlight that text, right-click, select copy. I'm going to maybe scroll down or enter down a couple of spaces. I'm going to right-click again. The paste window will come up. I'll select that and then Control V to enter that text into the pop-up box. I'll click OK, and then you'll see that the text there has now been duplicated. So that is how you would copy and paste and drag and drop for different ways to get the content into your response box, should you wish to do it that way for any of the various questions that you're asked on the examination. I'll also demonstrate the highlight functionality and the strike through functionality. So you can go back and remove that strike through and highlight if you reselect and click remove, reselect and click remove. Okay, so that pretty much sums up what I wanted to show you for the demonstration for today. So I'll stop sharing my screen and then we'll go over to the Q&A box.
We do
All
have a
right.
few questions.
Yes, I
If you
see
want
that.
to, for our French agents in training, if you want to write in French, feel free to do so.
Yes. So if you would even if you've asked asked to see the exam in English, but you want to write your response in French, you're more than welcome to do that, and vice versa. But the platform will only be displayed in the language that you selected on your registration form. So we have a question about passing marks, and I've already described that we don't provide the pass marks for the exams. The candidate ID you'll receive on October 17th, so I've already gone through that. Control Z, I don't believe that functionality is available in the platform, but you're more than welcome to test that during the live proctor check-in during that week. If you come across an issue where you need to undo something and you're unable to do that, then please flag your proctor's attention and ask them for some troubleshooting assistance for what to do next. The pass rate for last year's skills exams, those are actually posted on our website. If you go to, I'll just reshare my screen really, really quickly so that I can show you where to find that on the website. So under About Us and then Reports, we have an exam reports section. And you'll be able to see the exam pass mark report for all of the exams that we've been administering under the new regime. So you can see what the 2024 Patent Agent Skills Exam report was and what the pass rates were for last year. Okay, so a quick question about the difference between Part 1A and B of the practice exams versus Part 1A and B of the real exams. I'll stop sharing. So 1A and B of the sample exams, we used previous exam content to create the sample exams. So you'll see that Part 1A and 1B is really using the same content, but just showing it to you in the different format that you'll expect on the real exam. On the real exam, there will be two different scenarios. So it's not going to be the same content that you got on the first day that you'll get on the second day. In other words, there'll be two different technologies or inventions or whatever it is, apparatus between those two parts. They're not going to be using the same content. They're going to be different content. But the sample exams that are on the website use the same content over both parts just for illustrative purposes. No other resources are permitted during the exams, so you are not permitted to have a dictionary with you. There is no limit on the size of your monitor as long as you are able to launch the secure browser and use the functionality of the examination. There aren't any issues or constraints for the size of the monitor that you're allowed to use. It says, can we consider the sample key answers provided on CPATA's website as the approximate framework of an expected answer from a candidate? So the sample exam answers, they really only are providing samples for illustrative purposes. So they represent one of several possible approaches to answering the questions, and actual exam responses may vary, and there might be multiple valid ways to address a question. Okay, let me just read this question before I read it out loud. As I said, the sample exam answers really are just provided for illustrative purposes. The actual exam answers and responses might be different for what we might expect from a candidate, and there might be multiple valid ways to address a question. So just because something is visible on the sample exam doesn't necessarily mean that's what we expect somebody to do on the actual exam. There might be a different way of providing your response. Next question, is it possible to increase or decrease the size of the whole table after copying and pasting, such as usually possible in Microsoft Word? No. Okay, so once you drag and drop the chart into the response box, you have to just type your answer into the cells that are visible there. There's no way really that I would recommend to change the size of the table because you'll be spending more time formatting your table than you will be actually answering the question. So my recommendation would be to just drag and drop the table in as it appears on the exam, and then to click into the boxes that you want to respond to and just start typing your responses into there. You can see how many questions are on each exam component on the sample exams. So you can take a look at sample exam 1A, 1B, 2A, and 2B. And I can say that they are the same number of questions that you will see on the actual exams, even though the questions might be different. So the marks for these exams, so the performance reports and the results for these exams will be released in February. You can see on our website under the agents and training and then patent agent qualifying exam, there is a results tab. And if you scroll down, you can see the information, including the expected results, release date, as well as some FAQs for the exams. Do we have to put reference numbers on figures? So on this exam platform, there are just text response boxes, and you're responsible for responding to the question that's being asked of you. So you're not going to be asked to label specific things on the actual exam platform. You might need to look at the figures that are provided and refer to those figures in your responses, but you are not going to be required, for example, to physically label things on the exam platform. Would marks be affected by font discrepancies? No. So as I mentioned, if there are any discrepancies in the text, like if spaces between words disappear, you are not going to be penalized for that. And you are also not required, and I do not recommend going in back to fix those things. You're just going to be wasting time that you could be using to respond to questions or to review your answers. So if there are any issues with font discrepancies, like if something maybe is a larger font or a smaller font, you will not be penalized for those types of formatting things that might occur. Those have been all of the questions that have been asked so far. I will leave it open for just a few more minutes while I say my closing remarks. And if there's any other questions that come through, oh, there we go. You cannot use a dictionary. I've already answered that question. There are no other resources that are permitted to use during the examination. You are only able to bring in your scrap pieces of paper for each exam day, a pencil and paper, and you have access to the Act and the rules through the exam aids section of the platform. You are not permitted to use any other resources during the examination. Yes, we have had a question that says, can we mix French and English in our responses when you're unsure? That's totally fine if you need to do that. If you want to write in English, but then write part of your response in French, that is completely fine. We will make sure that the proper exam advisory group member who is bilingual will be able to mark that exam, and you will not be penalized for that type of thing. Is there a limit on the number of people passing this year? No, we do not put on arbitrary limits on how many people can pass the examination. It is my hope that lots of people pass the examination. As the regulatory body, we want people to be able to demonstrate their competency to us. And so if we have a very high pass rate, then that is not a problem from our perspective. We would never cap the number of people that could pass the examination. Can you copy and paste from the rules material? So if I'm understanding, you mean like the Patent Act and the patent rules. If that's the case, yes, you can copy and paste from those sections. What you would do is you would select the text that you wanted to copy and paste from the exam aid section, and you would do the window or the right click method. So you would select the text to right. I believe for that one you have to do Control C or Command C, and then go back to the exam platform and right click on the place where you wanted to paste that, and then the little paste button will come up, and that's when you can paste the text into the pop-up, press OK, and it should automatically go in there for you. Let me just see if I can do a demonstration on that really quickly for you, so that I can show you what I mean and so that it's recorded for everybody's use. I'm just gonna try to go to a random section of the act. Okay. Let's see if this works. I'm gonna try it myself first, and then I will demonstrate. Wonderful. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen again so that you can see what I just did. Okay. So say you want to copy something from the act or the rules. You would go to the section that you wanted to copy, select the text. So say I want to copy this filing date. You're going to go Control or Command C. So I've just done that. Close the exam aids. Go into the text box that you want to paste it into. And I want to paste it right here. So I'm going to right click. You see the little paste window pops up. You click on that, and then Control V or Command V, you can see that this text that I've copied from the act or the rules is now in this little window. If you click on OK, then that has now been inserted into the response box. So that works as well. So as I mentioned, the samples are available on the website. I'm not going to be able to tell you exactly what is on the actual exam for this year, but you can see 1A and 1B and the types of questions that are asked on each of those examinations. We have about 90 candidates writing the examination this year. Some candidates are writing one part if they're repeat writers and they've passed a part previously. Some are writing both parts if they are new writers or if they were unsuccessful with both parts last year. Next question is, if a candidate passes only one part, will they be required to do a remedial training program to be allowed to sit the next year? So that depends on how many attempts they've already had. If this is the person's second attempt at the exam and they're unsuccessful with both parts or one part, whichever part they didn't complete the previous year, then yes, then they will be required to do a remedial training and education plan in order to establish their eligibility to redo that part at the next sitting. If this is the person's first attempt at the skills exam, and they haven't previously requested a waiver, then they would be able to sit the next administration without having to do a remedial training and education plan. If the person had previously requested a waiver for 2024, so technically this is their first attempt, but it's going to put them over that 2-year mark, then they will also need to do the remedial training and education plan. Is it possible to have a different view of the screen, especially where we need to read a description and check the related reference numbers and figures at the same time? So what we've showed you on the sample exams are the only way the exams can be configured on the platform. So you're not able to change the view of the screen. What I would recommend doing is you might want to jot some notes down for yourself on your scrap paper if that helps, or do like a drag and drop of certain text into your response box if you want to look at the response box on the right side, as well as scroll to a different section of the reference materials on the left side. But the way that it's set up is not changeable during the actual examination. So there is a search function, and as I mentioned during the presentation, there is actually on the website, I can show you. Let's see here on the website under preparation. I don't know if you can see the screen, but I'll reshare it again. So I'll just share my screen too. So on the preparation page, there is a video called Searching Exam Aids, and this is the process that you would follow to actually do the search on the platform. Now, it is not available through the sample exams. You will need to make sure that you download the new version of the secure browser and then test that functionality during the live proctor check-in. Oh, somebody's asking if I can demonstrate the control plus and control minus to zoom in and out. For sure, no problem. So I'm going to do a control out. So you can see right now I've made it smaller so everything kind of fits onto the page a little bit better. And then if you do the control plus, then it gets bigger. So you can do that to zoom in or zoom out of the screen. And you can also use the font size functionality to change the font text size. So now you can see this really, really big now. And now it's really, really small. So that's how you would do that. So the remedial training is really an individualized process where you and your supervisor sit down to identify areas that you need to work on. So we have some steps that you would follow. It involves looking at the competency profile, identifying the things that you don't feel comfortable or don't feel strong doing, and then creating pretty much a list of activities that will help you practice those things. So it's not something that we provide to you. It's something that you need to come up with based on your own individual learning needs. Then you submit that to us. We review it to confirm that it's okay. And then once you've completed it, you and your supervisor attest that you complete it. So yes, the version of the Act and the rules that are on the sample exams are the older versions that we used in 2024. The one that you need to use for the exam is the one that's linked in the current candidate guide that's on our website. So the Patent Act and the patent rules that are linked in the candidate guide on the website are the ones that were used to develop the 2025 exams, and those are the ones that are going to be visible to you on the actual exam platform. So you are more than welcome to look at those and familiarize yourself with those ahead of the actual examination. I'll stop sharing. Lots of great questions this afternoon. Thanks everybody for your engagement. I'm going to need a refill on my water. All right, we still have a little bit of time. We do have time until 4 o'clock in case there are.
That just came in.
Another one? I didn't see it. Which one is that?
Is it the copy from Grant Walters, or is it, do we?
I've just answered that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yep. Okay, well, oh, we got another one. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
No problem. Those are the easy ones. Okay, well, that being said, I wanted to thank everybody for your participation and engagement during the webinar today. We really appreciate it. If there is anything that you need, any questions that you have that we didn't answer, or something that comes up later on, Please feel free to reach out to Tifan and I through the registration email. We will do our best to respond as quickly as possible. As a reminder, you'll get your confirmations on October 17th, and that will have your candidate ID in it, so don't worry, you haven't missed anything. The recording and the PowerPoint deck will be posted on the website over the next couple of days. The live proctor check-in is mandatory, and it's really, really important that you uninstall the old version of the secure browser and install the new version of the secure browser before you do the live proctor check-in, and then test all of that different functionality that I was just going through with you. You can also test, work on the sample exams that are on the platform on the website to get a better idea of how things work and to play around a little bit. But it's definitely important that you do that on the secure browser environment just to make sure that everything is working properly before your exam days. I would like to take the opportunity to thank our staff on the call. So thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Dana, for all of your assistance. Thank you, Tifan, my co-presenter. You are awesome. And thank you to our interpretation team. We really appreciate it as well. So that being said, I will end the webinar for this afternoon. Thank you all very much again, and good luck in a couple of weeks. We wish you the best of luck. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you. Merci.
Thank you.